This is ABC-7 at 10 Weekend.
Today, Christians around the world observed Easter, the most joyous day in the Christian calendar. The day Jesus rose from the dead, bringing a promise of eternal life for the faithful. Speaking to Catholics from the central balcony at St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis not only asked for peace, he also denounced the bloody persecution of Christians at the hands of Islamic extremists in the Middle East and Africa. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Josie Ortegon.
And I'm Lyddon. Tonight's top story: Republican lawmakers in Austin want to repeal a 2001 law that allows some young people in this country illegally to pay in-state tuition at public universities and colleges in Texas.
That's right, Luke. Republicans say the law in place right now is a magnet that attracts undocumented youths to Texas. Some lawmakers are worried because tomorrow there will be a Border Security Subcommittee hearing arguments in favor of Senate Bill 1819, which would repeal the law in place. The Texas Tribune says some lawmakers are questioning why the bill would not be discussed by an education committee instead. UTEP President Diana Natalicio says that she is against Campbell's proposal and in favor of letting undocumented students continue paying in-state tuition.
I think it's a shame to deny them the opportunity to get an education. So I'm a bit disappointed that we would be talking about this because I think it's really important that we encourage young people with talent to get more education.
State Senator Jose Rodriguez, an El Paso Democrat, told the Texas Tribune treating tuition rates as a question of border security is an insult to students who want to get ahead. The senator said, quote, "It is implying these students are threats to the country when in fact they're trying to contribute to the country," end quote.
Also stirring up a hornet's nest in Austin. State lawmakers want to cut $3 million in funding for programs to prevent HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. Instead, the state wants to spend more money on abstinence education. That is the topic of tonight's ABC-7 Extra. Here's a sneak peek.
The Senate is also heavily dominated by conservatives, so, it's likely that this might become a reality.
Definitely a point of concern, and one of the first things that I'll address is the fact that given the importance of this public health issue, anytime that you have an important public health issue, you have innovators that come out to kind of create the programming to address the issues. You've got a lot of innovative programming in this field, specifically HIV, AIDS, education, and prevention.
Why the Borderland AIDS Partnership feels the move will affect those at the forefront of HIV research. ABC-7 Extra airs immediately after our newscast, but tonight's show is pre-recorded. That means we will not be taking your phone calls and emails live tonight. A deadly crash in your Van Horn leaves one man dead. It happened yesterday 2 miles south of Van Horn near Culberson County. Police say 29-year-old Joshua Matheson died after his Dodge Charger hit a Ford pickup truck and rolled on the freeway. Police say Matheson was not wearing his seatbelt.
Luke, on a different note, it was a rather pleasant Easter Sunday in the borderland. ABC-7 recorded this video in West El Paso this afternoon. You can see Mission Hills Park was packed with families spending some quality time together. The girls were fired up, the music was playing loud, and the kids were playing soccer, and there was enough wind to fly kites. And Dan, you said earlier today we're in for a windy week.
That's right, and we're going to start seeing those winds. I mean, we saw them today. We're going to continue seeing them tomorrow. We're expecting winds up to 45 miles per hour. Take a look right now what we're expecting for your Monday on our windcast here. You notice the winds are expected to go up to 45 miles per hour by the afternoon. You notice at about 3 o'clock is when things will start to peak, about 45 miles per hour. Then we'll kind of go down to about 40 around 6 o'clock in the afternoon. At least that's what models are indicating as of right now, though we'll be watching that closely. So far right now, though, you'll notice we're at 78 degrees. The wind's still kind of strong, about 20 miles per hour here in the El Paso area. For Las Cruces, we're seeing similar conditions, 58 degrees with those west-northwest winds at 9 miles per hour. We'll be talking about your wake-up weather coming up in a few minutes. Josie, Luke?
All right, Dan, thank you. We'll see you in just a bit. Looking ahead now, tomorrow El Paso County Commissioners are expected to confirm the nominees to replace William Hanson and Laura Ponce on the University Medical Center Board. County Commissioners Vince Perez and Carlos Leon announced their nominations last week. Perez nominated Miguel Fernandez, a UTEP business grad and telecommunications CEO. Leon nominated Joy Martinez, CEO of the Nazareth Hall Nursing Center. He says these appointments are crucial as the county hospital and the Children's Hospital work to improve their financial relationship.
It's very important that they're the communication lines between the commissioners and our appointees, our board members, are always open, that they keep us informed, because some of these votes, as I mentioned earlier, are very critical, and we vote on information that we receive both from the management and administration of UMC and our board members.
Commissioner Vince Perez told ABC-7 last week he expects the court to unanimously confirm the nominations during tomorrow's meeting. And keep in mind, the Children's Hospital owes the county hospital more than $90 million. Both hospitals have an agreement in place to settle the staggering debt. Now it's up to Commissioner's Court to sign off on the deal by the end of this month. In the coming weeks, the Las Cruces Police Department will install more than 70 body cameras on traffic and patrol officers. The department says it not only wants to protect officers, but also hold them accountable if something goes wrong. The small cameras weigh less than an ounce. They can be worn on shoulder lapels, helmets, and get this, even sunglasses. Police say the cameras cost about $320,000, which will be spent over a 5-year period.
And new tonight, iconic popular culture magazine Rolling Stone issues an apology and is officially retracting a controversial and discredited article about an alleged gang rape at the University of Virginia. Rolling Stone asked for an independent review after other news media organizations exposed flaws in the November 2012 article. The article in question is titled "A Rape on Campus." It focused on a student identified only as Jackie, who said she was raped by 7 men at a frat house. Jackie refused to cooperate in the police investigation. A 4-month police investigation produced no evidence the attack happened. Despite its flaws, the article heightened security of campus sexual assaults.
Rolling Stone managing editor Will Dania is also apologizing to readers, members of the Phi Kappa Psi fraternity, and those affected by the bogus story. Dania released a statement tonight saying, quote, "Sexual assault is a serious problem on college campuses, and it is important that rape victims feel comfortable stepping forward. It saddens us to think their willingness to do so might be diminished by our failings," end quote.
It is a wake-up call. California Governor Jerry Brown issues a grave warning while defending his executive order requiring Californians to cut back on their water use. It's a historic and controversial mandate because it spares those who consume the most water, farmers. This morning on ABC's This Week, host Martha Raditz asked Brown why farmers are excluded from the order when they consume 80% of the state's water supply and only account for 2% of the state's economy. Brown's response was simple. Farmers don't waste water, and restricting their water use could leave tens of thousands of farm workers without a job.
But farmers are getting zero allocation from the federal Central Water Project. That's a big deal. That hasn't happened before. Now, of course we could shut it off. If you don't want to produce any food and import it from some other place, theoretically you could do that. But that would displace hundreds of thousands of people, and I don't think it's needed.
Brown's mandate requires towns and cities statewide to reduce water use by 25%.
A Confederate memorial with flags and columns will soon stand on private property off I-10 in the East Texas city of Orange. It is about 100 miles east of Houston. You can see the columns without the flags in this photo. The memorial is funded by the Sons of Confederate Veterans. It will have 32 waving flags representing Texas regiments of the Confederate Army, along with 13 columns for each Confederate state. The Orange City attorney says this is a bad idea, but there is little the city can do because the memorial is on private property. And while some say the memorial evokes an ugly legacy of violence and discrimination, defenders say it's important to preserve the South's history. Marshall Davis, a spokesman for the Sons of Confederate Veterans in Texas, said, quote, "The more education about the South and what they were fighting for, the more compassion people will have for the Confederates and what they did," end quote.
The Sons of Confederate Veterans group is already suing the state of Texas in a case before the U.S. Supreme Court. The group applied for the specialty plate in Texas, which includes its logo bearing the Confederate flag. The state turned it down, and while the group says this is a violation of its freedom of speech, the state argues it cannot sanction messages that could incite violence. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision is expected in the next few months. And back to storm track weather now. This is a live look of El Paso you'll see only on ABC-7. It's courtesy of our exclusive mountain camera at the top of the Franklin Mountains. And storm tracker Dan Martinez rejoins us this time with a look at your wake-up weather. Dan.
Hey there, things looking very nice for tomorrow morning. 62 degrees around 5 o'clock in the morning. And you saw with our mountain cam a little bit of that shaking still going on. We're expecting to stay breezy at least till about 2 o'clock in the morning overnight, so keep that in mind as well. But for tomorrow around 7 o'clock in the morning, 60 degrees, and then we see those winds come back into the picture by about 9 o'clock. You'll want to stay tuned to my full forecast. I'll be showing you your 7-day forecast with the winds. That's coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, Dan, thank you. A minor earthquake shakes a rural area not too far away from El Paso. Today, the U.S. Geological Survey said the 3.3 magnitude quake happened Friday outside Pecos in Reeves County. That is about a 3-hour drive east of El Paso. The Reeves County Sheriff's Office says there are no reports of any injuries or damage.
Now take a look at this video.
Take a look at this video of a fire that broke out on an oil platform in Mexico. This video is courtesy of the RT News Network, and more than 300 workers were evacuated from the petroleum giant Pemex, which is located in the Gulf of Mexico. 4 people were killed. The search is still on for 3 missing workers. Officials say there was no significant oil spill. They add they're beginning to restore production at the facility. The fire is still under investigation. And new information on the vicious terror attack in Kenya that left 148 Christian students dead. Today, Kenya's The Daily Nation newspaper reported police waited 7 hours before sending officers to fight the gunmen. Once those officers arrived, it took them about 30 minutes to kill 4 of the Islamic terrorists.
And back here in the borderland, a Vietnam veteran repairs a religious shrine just in time for Easter Sunday.
Last month, vandals destroyed the Road to Heaven shrine located west of Chaparral. Vietnam veteran Manuel Medina created the non-denominational shrine years ago after the vandals broke it and painted graffiti on the man's work. Medina vowed to have it repaired by Easter Sunday. The community came together to help him repair it, and they were successful. And coming up, the horse racing community mourns the loss of a legend who made his mark at Ruidoso Downs.
And March Madness is wrapping up. Today we find out who is playing in the Women's NCAA Championship.
And fans race to the movie theater for this weekend for the highly anticipated release of Furious 7. The franchise made history over the weekend. And in weather, Dan.
Well, I've got your windcast ready to go for the next 7 days. I'll give you the numbers in detail coming up in Storm Track Weather.
You're watching ABC-7 World News. Starts.